Right, good afternoon, everyone. We are delighted to welcome you all to another insightful session on connecting the dots. First and foremost, our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speakers for joining us today and contributing their valuable perspectives to this panel discussion. Ms. Radhika Niranjan, she is the founder and CEO at RNI Associates. Mr. Srinath Guru Raja Rao, he is the advisor to board at Nexwell.ai and also the managing partner at Niche HR Global. Ms. Harsha Yelamaraju, she is the people business partner at Pegasystems. Mr. Abhishek Gupta, head of HR and admin at Zeppay. And Ms. Ritika Chandok, she is the head of communications and public affairs at RHI Magnesita India Limited. We are truly honored to have such accomplished leaders with us, bringing their expertise and insights to their discussion. To know more about our speakers, you may follow them on LinkedIn, the links shared in the chat window. Now, on behalf of HRI, I also extend a warm welcome to our participants to this session on the impactful topic Manager Burnout, supporting the stressed layer of the workforce. For more information about HRAI and upcoming events, please visit the link shared in the chat window. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Ms. Ritika Chandok, who will be guiding us through this discussion with her deep insights and expertise. Over to you, Ms. Ritika.
Thank you so much, Faisal, for the kind introduction and a very warm welcome to everyone tuning in online. Great to have you all with us, and a special thanks to our panelists for being part of this conversation. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. It's one of those topics that every manager feels, but never always talk about it openly enough. So, the topic that we are diving into today is one that quietly shapes how every organization functions. It's the manager burnout. So, different, but yeah, it's honestly the time that we talk about it. And let's be honest, managers have had they have a very rough ride lately. They are carrying a lot, balancing strategic goals with, teams' well being, handling performance reviews and people issues and whatnot, and also keeping things steady through the constant change that we all facing right after COVID and during the COVID. So they are the ones who make sure that work actually happens, while very often putting their own well-being to the last.
Oh,
So I was talking to a manager recently who said that I spend so much time checking if my team is okay, I forget to ask myself if I'm okay. So that line really stayed with me. So because that's the reality for so many people in that middle layer, and we've all been through it, so we know how is it that how they are the ones holding everything together very quietly. So it's really tough spot to be in, and they are expected to drive results, keep the teams motivated, and stay calm through shifting priorities and endless meetings. It's like being in the middle of a tug of war, pulled from both directions, but still expected to keep smiling and leading. And when managers start to feel stretched too thin, it doesn't just stop there. So the effects ripple across the team. The confidence drops, communication breaks down, and overall the performance always takes a hit. So that's the repercussion of it. So in fact, very recently I heard a manager describe their role as being the shock absorber, of the organization. And very often, if I also go back, I also probably have said it too many times that I'm the shock absorber. Everything from top down pressure to bottom up stress, it all passes through them. So, and the hardest part, they are expected to absorb it all with a nice smile. So that's what we are here to unpack today. What's really driving this burnout? What signs organizations often miss, and what can actually be done about it? So we'll explore how companies can redefine workloads, enhance emotional support. Sorry, Harsha was saying something? Okay, maybe.
Not really,
And
thanks.
okay, build, enhance emotional support, and also build more empathetic leadership, not as a one-time fix, but as a part of a sustainable culture that helps both managers and their teams thrive and grow. So before we get into very deep questions, let me just, warm up with something very, very simple. So, this is to all the panelists. So, if you had to describe one burnout in one word, from what you have seen or experienced, what would that one word be? And probably, just describe, or maybe very, very briefly, why do you choose that word? And it can be anything that pops in your mind, honest, really, even funny, because we're just starting up and it's just to set the tone. And there are seriously no wrong answers here. So we can start with Harsha, you, because I thought you were supposed to say something.
Thank you. Thank you, Ritika. I think the one word which comes to me is this is unsustainable, right? Burnout is unsustainable because if you look at the description, it represents a state where the demands are exceeding the available resources, and it is impossible for the leader to continue or for the manager to continue without making any significant changes. So that is the word that occurs to me the moment you say burnout.
I was on mute. Radhika, can we hear from you next?
All right. The one word that comes to me is disconnection. You
Okay.
know, the break when you move away from reality because you feel that, okay, whatever I do, whatever I don't do, whatever I perform, whether I give my life, if I am not visible or valued, or there is no point in doing it, I get disconnected. So, most people in my journey, when I've seen quiet burnouts happening in the middle layer, it happens through this one word disconnection.
Very true. Abhishek, you want to go next? What is that one word?
I think, thanks, Ritika. One word would be a little difficult for me to put it because there are a lot of words come to my mind: disconnection, exhaustion, uh, tiring, and all that stuff. Because in my view, particularly burnout, I don't associate it just between the exhaustion because typically people say they are exhausted, they're burnout, they're tired. Uh, in my view, is basically the missing the link when there's a link between effort and meaning, right? Quietly that links breaks. That what I'm doing, is there any what efforts I'm making? Is there any meaning to it? Then basically the problem arises when you are still showing up, still performing tasks, but the spark is gone. Why is missing? The why feels blurred. So the entire, maybe the disconnection may be the right word, or disconnect may be the right word in that same way. But this is what I particularly feel about this word. When the why is missing.
Very true, in fact. Srinath, what's your one
Yeah,
word?
I would say excellence to excuses. The journey of spectrum between excellence to excuses is writ large, where the performance dips, productivity dips, engagement, slowly vanishes. You're pulled between multiple spectrums, multiple demands. As you said rightly, the top to bottom, the demands are entirely different. Here it is strategy, vision. There it is execution, performance, productivity. So a person in between goes through this every single day, and even a Buddha sitting there would find it hard and stressed.
Absolutely. In fact, if you ask me, I'd say reset because sometimes, for me, it's happened. Burnout isn't an end. It's just a nudge that sometimes, I mean, we all have different views. Sometimes that we need to, step back, breathe, and come back with a clearer head. So mostly for me, burnout is, the body and mind's way of saying it's time to take pause, realign, start afresh, not to stop everything, but yeah, to reset and how I'm, working and leading. So this really helps to kind of reset the entire system for once.
Yeah,
Even if you're doing something very important, always, there's some time to breathe.
true.
Great. So now we can probably jump to the main discussion. So we've set the stage. We know what exactly comes to our mind, top of our mind when we hear the word burnout. But then let's get to the heart of it. So generic questions. I think anybody from the panel can respond. But, before we go on to ask very customized questions to all of you. So how do you define a manager burnout beyond commonly used buzzwords? What early signs are often overlooked by the organizations? So we can start with you, Srinath, because you were the last one last time.
Yeah, thanks. I think exhaustion shows in disengagement, decisions broken, loops incomplete, right? And a team wanting more time from the manager to be able to just say, I am here with you. So a manager experiences this range of activities, and today it is all the more prominent. It is visible in umpteen amounts of dashboards, data presentation, information inflation, information available at the tip of the hand, but decision leading to indecision, right? Where I'm just not able to decide on where should I go with all that information that is there. You have a 9 box converted to 16 boxes, and you're trying to as a manager put every aspect of your day-to-day realities into some box or the other to be able to make more meaning, more sense. I think beyond these birds, it's a daily ritual for these managers to go through these set of emotions, realities, and to have to deal with it. And most often than not, the training that is required to emotionally be stable is lacking. It's just 40 hours, per year, calendar driven in most organization even today. So therefore, a focused approach to deal with it, identify it, create awareness, and equip the managers with the right set of tools, activities is very, very pertinent. I think beyond the buzzwords, the reality strikes very hard. And to be able to develop your manager is actually to build that organization resilience, which can last forever.
I
That's
can
a
just
great way
add
to,
on,
yeah,
Ritika.
please.
I
Yeah, yeah.
wanted to talk about the early warning signs, right? I think you will see that there is a shift from being efficient to less efficient. You'll see there is a little cynicism because you feel it's just an overworkload and you're not able to kind of transfer the messages from the top to the bottom. You'll see that in your routine interactions, there's a little bit of irritability also that shows up. You'll see there are long hours, but the output is not in line with the number of hours. I think these are a couple of early signs that, as leaders, you might want to notice when there is a manager burnout.
Great way to put it, Harsha. Radhika, would you like to give it a shot? This one?
Yes, because in fact, I will derive my points from the earlier two speakers, Harsha and Srinaji, because one thing that I observed in my journey was that invariably managers feel like a dholak. Okay, uh, and they are bumped into, banged into from all sides. And at some point of time, they're like just too wary to, battle it out because on one side, like Srinaji said, there is so much of information, a lot of water all over, but not a drop to drink because you really don't know which one to pick up and which one to use. Right? So that's one decision paralysis they face. And at the same time, handling emotions of team has become so much of an emotional labor that they're not able to focus on themselves, right? Which leads to cynicism, irritability, perhaps at times also a, a stage comes where people just give up and say that, okay, I'm here to take a box and I've done it and I'm done with it, right? These kind of emotional outbursts on the floor come up when managers get stretched too thin, too fast, and too far. So beyond typical buzzwords of oh my god they can't handle pressure, I don't think it's not about it's not about pressure handling. It's more about dealing with too many things at the same time without having a fallback or a place where they can go and have a safe space to vent. They say right when the pressure cooker also is kept on the gas too far, it will burst. So sometimes managers experiencing burnout become those pressure cookers without a escape hatch.
Yeah, so true. In fact, you start to see the small things. A manager who used to be probably be really engaged in the team, and then team meeting suddenly goes quiet, or someone who always had ideas for improvement just stops suggesting them. It's also a way of being burnt out, and it's not that they don't care anymore. It's just that they're drained. They're drained after doing so much and nobody noticing. So I remember one manager who said, right after a draining meeting, it was draining for all of us. It got over, and he said that I spent all day supporting my team, And by the time I get to my own work, I've got nothing, kind of left in the tank. So that's, somehow the early signs of getting some attention to this person and, getting some help also. So yeah, so I think we framed it quite nicely. And another thing, what do you think are the top organizational contributors to the manager's burnout today? Is it the workload, or it is emotional labor, lack of clarity, remote work pressures because that's increased after pandemic? And so, which factors do you think have changed the most post pandemic? So we can start with you, Srinath, if you're okay.
Okay, as I said earlier, I think it's information inflation, right? Today at the tips of managers' screens, right? It is definitely overload, a lot of expectations, too many team spans are large and remote, and it is very ineffective to be able to drive a manager's performance through the lens of different people with emotions, different aspirations. All of this ties together in the KPIs of each individual, which is linked to the organization. However, the reality is most often than not, on a day-to-day basis, on an operational level, is beyond the spectrum of the KPIs. That is where the decision loops go delayed, and a manager struggles when he or she doesn't find an answer. I think to deal with it, as you said earlier, I think somebody needs to step back, look at it from a different point of view and a perspective, and say, you know what, this is how much I decide today. We have gadgets today which measures the decibel, screen time, all of that. But there is no gadget today still available which does show us how much of thinking did we do today. Are we experiencing fatigue, right? So I think some thoughts there, but there is no true answer to this. But yes, information overload and expectation overload is definitely there. And as long as we have simple KPIs, well driven from the top to the bottom, aligned to the execution, and make it more clearer, and equip managers with only the tools which are necessary to execute that, and not burden them with extra aspects of information and unnecessary demands. I think we should do well. I think this
Spot
this
on.
often
Yeah.
leads to the workload there.
Yeah, absolutely true. Harsha, would you
Yeah.
have any comments on this?
Yes, yes. In fact, I can talk for the software organizations, especially because after AI has come, now the race has intensified. That means teams are being asked to build things, and then you realize, okay, it's no longer relevant. You go back and again and ask again something else to be built. So there is so much of a rework. Organizations are trying to figure out what kind of capabilities their product should have. Now, if you want to ride onto the agentic wave, now you want to go back and say, hey, whatever you are doing 6 months back, it's not quite relevant. So we are going to scrap it. Now you have to start all over again. I think because of this dynamic nature of the work in itself, it's a significant contributor to the burnout, right? Because managers, at least in the product organizations, the GCC organizations, they're also responsible for delivery. They're responsible for feature development. They're responsible for people, performance management, and whatnot. And added to it, the work in itself being changing, the pace at which it is changing, the demands are changing. I think it's a very significant contributor to the stress, the burnout.
Absolutely, yeah. Can't agree more. Um, Radhika, would you have anything to say on this?
So all of us are HRs here and definitely understand that managers are expected to be a lot of things. They're expected to be a well-being coach. They're expected to be a culture custodian. They're expected to be a friend, philosopher, guide. They're expected to be a bridge between the management and the last mile employee and the customer. Because end of the day, if the customer is not happy, we have to all redo, and that hits our performance, right? So when there are so many expectations and very clearly no clarity on how you need to proceed and achieve all these various levels of roles that you need to play to the T. Those changing goalposts on every day itself drain people. Okay, and then add in the tadka of organizational politics. There is a little bit of conflict within the teams. Oh, you grew out of the team and became my manager. Why do I need to treat you like a manager? Or, oh, you are becoming a threat because there are three other people who I really like in the team, and you are suddenly, surfacing out. So dealing with all this thing puts in additional pressure and fatigue. So frankly speaking, there are just too many organizational contributors, especially after COVID when we became hybrid or remote, and people started preferring comfort of home and played in the hand to coming to office every day. So managing people expectations in such a diverse environment itself has become such a big contributor. And to top it all, I really don't know who can I approach where I speak, where I can be coached, or where I will be led to the right decision. So these kind of ambiguities are the key contributors, and the best way to deal with it is possibly humanize leadership again. Our leaders are responsible to take care of the middle level, whether we like it or we don't like it. Invariably, the leaders end up becoming too number driven because they have results to account for, and it doesn't really matter if the middle layer is stretched or stressed. So humanizing the leadership
Yeah,
will help to overcome this problem.
especially in the age of AI. Yeah, rightly framed. In fact, such great inputs, and I hope somebody's taking notes and some change happens in the organizations after this. So, I think we can go to the tailored and specific questions now, and we can come back to the generic questions once we have some time left. So, Abhishek, you've been quiet for some time. We can start with you. So, fintech and crypto operate with extreme speed and regulatory pressure. How do you keep your managerial layer steady when the environment itself is so unpredictable?
Uh, Thank you for this question, Kritika. I think as we know what fintech and crypto is all about, we swings on the extremes per se. Relentless pace, constant unpredictability from government, from other regulators, and all that stuff. Maybe one quarter you are aggressively scaling up, and next quarter you are rewriting the policies because some regulations have changed, right? In such an environment, what we believe at Zeppe, what I believe is particularly the steadiness, particularly that you talked about, doesn't come from the stability. It comes from the sense making. How much sense that you're making. So basically, let me explain that at Zeppe, our first lesson was that managers don't necessarily need calm seas. That's not possible in our scenario. They need, but what they need is clarity in the storm, not the calm sea, but clarity in the storm. And we have built what I personally like and what personally called something called communication scaffolding. Right. For example, every morning there's a note from CEO that what are we doing, what are we want to do, what we want to stop at simple articulation, what's changing, what's not, right? You have OKRs, which is quarterly, which is cascade across functions, so that even the how keeps evolving and why stays constant, because how is what is always evolving, but why is very very context. So this is very important. The second thing, what we do it particularly in Zeppe is something I call it adaptive leadership muscles. So, managers are coached to think in scenarios, not really if this happens, we will panic. No, but if this happens, here's plan A, B, C for that matter. Right? We have moved away from rewarding that firefighting approach. I know it's very interesting or very orthodox to sound like in a startup, but we are moved away from firefighting approach, rather rewarding calm decision making, right? In fact, in our all performance conversations, there's a behavioral theme that we are trying to introduce called sense making under uncertainty. So because that's what we work in, right? The third thing, and very quickly, is creating that psychological safety net. With I think we all know every manager has access to those peer circles, wellness programs, and all that kind of stuff, which is like very very simple. And I think somebody started with this. I think you only said in the very beginning there were shock observers, very very important thing. In fact, for us, we want our managers to be observers rather not stress carriers. So there are two different things in our parlance. Stress carriers, that you're already having that stress. Okay, this karna hai, ye karna hai, wo karna hai, all that stuff. So that's very important. In our parlance, we don't ask our managers to be still, but we teach them how to be centered. Right, the world may move fast, but they can move from a place of purpose, not panic particularly. So that's what you can do in the crypto language. You cannot create stability in crypto, but you can create centeredness through clarity, connection, communication, and cadence. That's what we believe in Zappe.
I think you said it so well. That's what we all feel, not only Zephyr, I think it's facing every industry right now. So Radhika, for you, you work with leaders across industries. So what personal patterns do you see in managers who silently slip into burnout?
Uh, One very consistent pattern is the resistance to seeking help. Somehow in the industry, I've seen that when people become managers, the assumption is we know everything or are supposed to know everything and we cannot seek help. Worse, if we seek help, we will be treated as weak or not really, cut out for the next promotion. And when they don't seek help, when they don't draw boundaries, when boundaries start getting blurred into their personal life, when they start losing sleep over every small big thing in the organization, then burnout starts. Because you may not be expected to deliver at 24 or 26 hours a day, but that's an assumption which is already built in because there is no role clarity, right? I mean, I had one person who got promoted and was very happy with the promotion, really well deserving candidate who got the promotion. And day one of promotion, person comes up decked, ready in a suit, and oh, I am now this, I am now that. And all of us in HR were like, what happened to you? Till yesterday, you were a different person. Today, you seem to be a different person. And after 6 months, the same person says, you know what, I just can't take it anymore and I'm resigning. And itna extreme, when we saw the movement happen, we asked, what happened? We've been trying to talk to you through your 6 months, and we've only been seeing you excessively getting stressed and taking out, a lot of that stress at acutely wrong moments. What happened? Then it comes out very slowly that I didn't know how to handle a few things and I didn't know whom to ask. And I felt if I asked, you will throw me out as a non-performer. So somewhere there is a mindset in the industry that seeking help is not good, and that needs to be altered. Partially, HRs like us also are responsible for creating that because we are very happy to have one-on-ones, so long as it's a comfortable discussion where people don't open up with their true vulnerability. So that is a change. I certainly feel we should build a culture in every organization. And now I'm trying to, in my very small way, develop that in the MSME space where, as it is, the systems are, just evolving in a very mature way. So,
I think that's a real life scenario, not being, nobody wants to be perceived as a weak person asking for help. I think that's the main issue that we're facing here. And that's my question to Harsha, you, that from a people business partner view, are managers comfortable talking to HR, like Radhika just mentioned, to HR about burnout? Are they quite vocal about it, or there's still this stigma of or the fear that of being perceived as weak?
I agree with Radhika. I think there's always in fact, the burnout is positioned as a celebration of overwork, that you have done so much to really deliver the outcomes, right? I think when it comes to HR, the positioning is always extreme positive. But I think what we do as business partners is, of course, we do have a couple of systems in place. When I say couple of systems, what we try and do is your manager to team spans, right? So ideally, we say it's a 1:7. Please remember, we are a product organization. It can be completely different in other parts of the industry, right? So we keep a very close tab. Every quarterly, there's a review saying if you're a manager, if you're managing more than 10 people, we understand it's a lot for you. So we do have our threshold saying if you are doing more, how can we kind of ensure that you're building up a new manager in your team, you're investing on new people who can take up those responsibilities. So spans is one thing that is very important for us, we keep a tab on. The second thing we also enforce is, and it's a part of expectation, is as a manager you have your one-on-ones. That means you have your one-on-one with your manager as well. And one of the check-ins that you do on a bi-annual basis is saying, okay, how is just work treating you? And there's a lot of data that HR is able to get you. Of course, these are the systems in the organization. Have you over-delivered? While there is a celebration, we also ask a question saying, if you have delivered, your teams actually, the burnout is not just limited to you as a manager. Your teams are going to be 6 people or 7 people under you are also kind of delivering more. So we kind of bring that focus on to people, onto them, asking what is the support you require. So all of this is a coaching process at different layers of management that I think as HR professionals, we have a very important role. And of course, the systems come to your help to give you that data and to have those powerful conversations.
I think these are some very good, transparent examples that
Yeah.
I'm again, saying that people should take notes and do something about it, because this issue has to be first spoken and then dealt with. Srinath, you work very closely with leadership teams advising on, workforce strategy. Where do organizations underestimate the burden placed on the middle management, in your opinion? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think more than underestimate, I think it is the disconnectedness or the vastness of each one's sphere of work, right? And the interconnectedness between the loops are very short, very focused, and don't have much time to be able to distill all the information necessary to be able to do that. I love what another Abhishek mentioned earlier, that you build the muscle of the manager. I think strengthening the manager's capability is also a very, very vital aspect in every organization, to be able to give the right input there, so that the organizations and the leadership are able to trust the managers to take on additional things, build more value, focus more on value creation rather than visibility. Right. So, at places where I have worked earlier, we not only focused on a great place to work, which actually translates to the last mile, but we also ensured that people know what a great manager should be and what are the attributes of that, and planned for those aspects to be able to coach the manager to guide the team properly. Ultimately, organization is representational in its smallest team size is the team that the manager commands. So therefore, if unless that team performs well, aligns well, delivers well, organization also falters equally so. Right. So therefore, the microcosm of the organization always rests on the shoulders of the manager, who has to translate that and bring it to the realities. Therefore, a lot of impetus was given in terms of how we train, coach, provide tools, take away tools unnecessarily, right? Or also build the strength aspect of the manager's forte in terms of capability, and also to train successors in the next in line, so that the managers can actually do a good job, whilst at the same time enjoy the job and have no fear of failure, which is all the more very distinct, because the fear of failure drives not only the manager crazy, but also the teams commanded by them much more vulnerable. So I think these are some of the threats that I have seen, and at a leadership level, we were aligned to say that bring in the value together. When you have a problem, the first thing you do is raise your hand, right? Without the fear of consequences. Because unless you do that, the authenticity, the honesty in making a decision somewhere robs, because you're undermining that with the necessity for better visibility, right? So I think these are some of the threads that pop up in my mind while this question comes up.
No, really, really insightful, because, my key takeaway was the building of the successor, and, taking that fear away from, because
Yeah.
if you create a bench, that fear is not there then.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
that's a fantastic point. So now coming back to Abhishek. Abhishek, what changes in HR policies or workload design have you implemented or seen work to prevent burnout, especially in high growth environments? So was Abhishek, you on mute. I can't hear you.
That's great. Can you hear me now? Cool. So, Ritika, when we talk about burnout, we often make it sound like an individual issue, like as if like people need to sleep more or meditate more. It looks like in many of the conversation, right? But in reality, what I believe particularly burnout is a system design failure. So basically, it's a result of how we structure work, pace decisions, define success, the entire system design, and that's what we do at Zeppe also. It's a very design-led approach that we are taking for tackling burnout, treating it as an org hygiene issue, not a wellness campaign. So we have all those wellness camp. We all know that typical 360-degree wellnesses and all that stuff. So one major change, that shift that we have been able to do, is something called in the workload rhythm. We realize that in high growth cultures like us, everything starts to feel like an urgent. So we introduce something all like Zeb weeks, maybe a week or two in quarter, wherein there's no meetings and just for the self reflection, learning, deep work. It's not a break; it's a reset mechanism rather built into our operating rhythm. This reduces cognitive fatigue that we believed and signals that rest is a part of performance. So by the way, important part is rest is part of performance. So that's part of the policy, not really something that we are doing over and above for anyone for that matter. The second interesting thing that we have actually built is something called role heat maps. So basically, every manager, particularly for managers, so instead of just headcount planning, we mapped emotional and cognitive load, looking how many simultaneous decisions nodes a manager owns. So there's a manager, how many decision nodes that he owns, how much context switching it requires, how many people that way he or she has the reporting to, how many dotted line dependency that they manage. So it's kind of a role heat map. So depending upon that data or the kind of heat map, that allows us to redistribute responsibility sometime, and to an extent that sometimes we delay, if at all possible, maybe a couple of days for any project for that matter, if somebody is really really nearing that cognitive overload that we are talking about. The third part that we have done is something we rewired our collaborative hygiene, particularly wherein we are in a hybrid setup. Slack never ends, Slack pings never end. So we have decided the communication charter. We have actually empowered teams to decide their own communication charter, decide their own SLE, sometime internal, may not be that external, but internal SS for that matter. So speed should never come at a cost of sanity. That is very, very important factor that we do in Zeppe. And finally, just a small cosmetic change, but tone of the policy itself. Our lead policy begins with something like, we trust you to manage your energy, right? Responsibly. This is more from compliance to care. The difference is simple for us. So that's why I think for me, preventing burnout less is an HR, more of a system design for that matter. So it's isn't about overwork, it's about the over design. Leaders, as we must re-engineer work to have more rhythm, not just the velocity. That's what we do at Zeppe particularly.
I think very refreshing ideas, because it's mostly what I also feel, it's not the individual or HR issue, it's more of the system issue that that we are facing right now. So I think very good ideas, Abhishek. So my next question is to you, Radhika. How do you think can coaching and psychological safety be integrated into mainstream leadership and development, and not just for the senior leaders, also for the first-time managers?
So, there was one very nice point that Abhishek just made, that the tone and tenor of policies has changed from "this is expected" to "we trust that you prioritize yourself first." So, one thing that I have observed is coaching helps if given in the true spirit of the word. Many times, policy documents are worded very nicely, very positively, very inclusively, but the line manager or the CEO, or for that matter, the employee who reports into a first time manager, are not really trained to understand and epitomize or showcase what they have learned, right? So, when we speak to a manager who comes to us with a small challenge, the manager will first say, is it okay if I can really be honest and open about my problem, or will this have a repercussion? And especially, I see this a lot in MSMEs where these concepts are just being applied, though they've been in existence for a very long time, right? And invariably, people believe that if we open up, then maybe somewhere someone will take note and I will have a consequence. So the fear of consequence that Sheenaji was referring to is not really eliminated because of very nicely written policies. It's eliminated only if people really experience that kind of, safe zones where they can express. And coaching then becomes meaningful when the safe zone is felt and people see a change around them. A first time manager, for example, after being a stellar individual contributor, is suddenly exposed to too many things. So, here, what we do at R&I Associates is we develop a full fledged muscle building coaching program for a first time manager. We call it a People Profit Leader program. Okay, where we explain to this manager that you are a people leader who will result into profits, right? It's not the other way around that you target profits and kill your people or kill yourself in the bargain. We help them understand how they have to navigate by first knowing themselves fully and then their teams and their managers, so that the communication can then be tailored situationally with proper boundaries for themselves first. So while some may say that, oh, are you focusing on me first? Yes, for a manager, first time, we do focus on you first. As an individual, if you do not focus on yourself, if your cup is empty, you really cannot pour to anybody else. So those are the kind of techniques we use when we are coaching first time managers to become first self-sufficient, self-reliant, and then a cushion for the rest who need you. Otherwise, it's very easy for a first time manager, if not coached well, to become a pummeling bag. And on the other hand, we also advise our CHROs, CEOs, the leaders with whom we work, that there has to be clarity in communication. Many times people fumble not because they're not smart or intelligent or don't know how to do the job. They fumble because they aren't sure where do they get hands on and where do they step back and allow someone else to contribute. And unless this clarity is given to them vocally, especially in the Gen Z scenario where everyone expects templates, becomes very difficult for managers to balance among their responsibilities and manage expectations and egos of others. So these are the few areas where we coach. Of course, when we speak to people, we do our own thorough KYT with these people to understand them in depth, including their fears and their apprehensions, and then work on each aspect in a slightly different way. Sometimes we gamify certain concepts, sometimes we make it like a very, very, confidential conversation where only the issues are highlighted, not the person, to make sure that they see resolution and action on their issues raised rather than on themselves. So these are a few things that we do to help alleviate the burnout at manager level from our side.
That's really interesting how you are giving the first time managers, the time, the training, the breather, like how traditionally we used to call it honeymoon period. So that's important. That also, helps in eliminating the burnout later, because right now what I have seen around me and for my colleagues and for some, the team members, people are only the people who are hiring, they're only looking for plug and play. You come instantly, start working. So then there's no time for them to get settled in the organization, and hence the burnout. So that's what I think, that's a very interesting thought. And to stay
Actually,
with that,
too much of
Harsha,
plug and
yeah,
play. In fact, too much of plug and play is like caffeine.
yeah,
Very interesting to
absolutely.
raise the adrenaline for like 5 minutes, but beyond a point of time, you'll get hyperactive. Doesn't help.
Exactly, exactly. And that obviously will cause burnout later. I mean, if not now, then obviously around maybe 6 months down the line or something. So, Harsha, for you, how do you practically support managers who are being asked to drive performance, execute change, and handle employee wellness all at once?
I think part of that's an expectation from a manager, right? There is no sugarcoating. We can't, I mean, they have signed up for it, so it's part of their job, right? What you can do, and tying up to what Radhika said, is how can you help them do that better? Because if you're not very efficient at you're going to burn out because you're taking more time, you're going to spend more time on it. Each one of these processes, one, how do you kind of efficiently provide them all the resources, the coaching that they require? How do your systems throw up any red flags if things are not in place, right? For example, working with remote employees. And that's an extra pressure because if you have your team around, I think there's a different rhythm to how you get things done versus people in different locations getting onto calls and you don't have a direct view into it. What we do at Pega is, of course, we do have a Pega playbook which says, okay, we do have core days. A lot of organizations do this, right? You do have teams showing up at certain core days and team which is remote on the other days. So we are a little more prescriptive, which brings in a rhythm of working. Otherwise, it's going to be again a burden on the manager saying, I expect you to come, and the employee saying, I can't come on it. So as an organization, we are sorted in terms of, okay, there are two core days. The teams can decide when. So there is a flexibility element, though. I think that is when it comes to supporting remote work. And also, we advocate a strong camera on organization. That means the manager, imagine your team members not even showing up on camera. Now there's this pressure of saying, okay, what is this guy doing? Is he engaged or not? So again, another systemic intervention which says all of us at the organization, whenever you're on a meeting, you're a camera on organization. I think these kind of playbook eases out to manage your remote workforce. That's one. Performance management, again, to Radhika's point, I think for new managers, it's a new thing. We do spend a lot of time. There are a lot of enablement sessions which help them get it right. Of course, they don't get it right the first year, but they have their leaders who support them. So there is a system which helps them. There are people who are behind them to kind of help them get that better, become more efficient. Lastly, I think what is also important is you have to see whether burnout is continuous and chronic. There's usually burnout, which I know in my experience, closer to the delivery time, teams have to rally with new features, new additions, changes being modified, etc. If that is not chronic, I think it's okay for us to say, okay, it's a temporary phenomena, happens right before your product release. If you can do much about it, you can provide more resources, it's fantastic. But if you have a limited capability, I think you have to just understand. I think as leaders, that's where we expect the managers to say that, okay, I can do this for a month, but I can't do this forever. Having those kind of conversations, ascertaining whether it's chronic or not chronic is a very important part of managing these situations.
I think that's framed really well. And Srinath, since you mentioned AI, so from a technology and AI lens, how can digital solutions reduce, redundant managerial load instead of becoming just another tool to manage?
Excellent question. I think from information overload to a predictive assistive tool, AI can take away a lot of work, load, and decision burdens, which with large sets of data pools, and make it more qualitative. Today, that is possible with AI being working with the manager rather than on the manager. Right. I specifically choose that word because AI today is seen as being replacing an individual rather than a decision aiding tool. But once an organization decides, and as Abhishek put it, you design the job well, factoring in all the nodes, you would be able to use AI much better in giving out the proper decisions that are more qualitative and more value additional. I think AI has reduced the time it takes to make a proper qualitative decision today with enough data points and quality of outcomes in terms of data assimilation and data information that converts into intelligence at the hands of the manager if it is used properly. I'll give you an example where we talked about, we had a absenteeism rate about in two digits, in a point of time. So we decided to feed in enough data in terms of types of illnesses, geographical spread, and seasonality. Right, when we incorporated this and we had a data of what is plausible, what is repetitive, what is controllable, what is uncontrollable, we were able to engage the workforce much better with a personalized plans in terms of creating awareness, preventive measures using AI. Today it is possible. If you have 15,000 people, 20,000 people, you are able to customize well using the data sets that you have much better and work with your ecosystem, your vendor partners to be able to structure much better engagement activity to unburden the decision makers from the day-to-day rigors. I think that is possible today with AI. But if you use AI to just thrust, and I have seen some managers who go to AI and ask all the questions about the manager's performance and go back and give him 20 questions to answer, and this guy, poor fellow, is stuck behind the screen trying to figure out what the answer is, and all the more likely that he used the same AI to generate those answers and push it back, right? So it kind of works both the ways. So I think building trust, working together, working with technology has always yielded well for us through the generations. I think even now AI is a much better, far superior tool, and cognitively much higher in terms of any platform that we have used in the past. We should be able to help our managers use those tools in a proper manner, creating value for the organization, and that is possible today when you use that.
So true. In fact, this is the real scenario on the ground these days.
Yeah,
So, as much as I am enjoying asking questions to you all, but then in the interest of time, I think we'll just get to the closing questions in case we have any questions from the audience after that. So, my questions to now all of you is if every company watching this session or maybe any CHR or CEO could implement just one change tomorrow to protect managers from burnout, what would you recommend? So, starting with you, Abhishek.
I think, in my view, if there is only one thing that one change every company could implement tomorrow to protect managers from burnout, is would be build structured recovery into the system, not something as an afterthought, but as a design principle. And we learn a lot about design thinking and all that stuff. Structured recovery. What I mean, basically, I believe particularly burnout isn't caused by hard work; it's caused by uninterrupted work, unending sprints particularly. So managers today are really, they're caught in a constant loop of decisions, Slack messages, escalations, context switches. They don't get tired because of effort, they get tired because there's no pause to integrate what that effort means. That is very important, and that's what I call it sometime, and we call it in Zep, is something called institutionalizing recovery through small but powerful rituals like Zep weeks, or something on the flexible work hours, what couple of people are discussing also. So that's where I think छोटी चीजें हैं but मोटी चीजें हैं, I would say, in Hindi particularly. It sounds simple but it's very transformative, because when leaders see recovery being legitimized by policy, the legitimized word is important. When they see it shift the culture from constant hustle to sustainable performance, and that's important. So that's what, and my recommendation always, like, don't teach managers how to avoid burnout, but engineer workflows so that they don't have to. So that's what I believe particularly.
I think very great perspective. It's not the work; it's basically the unending and uninterrupted work that we have. In fact, yeah, that's a good key point. I'll also take away. What do you think, Radhika, on this?
One thing that we advise a lot of our leaders, CEOs, and fellow HRs at other forums also, is that creating psychologically safe spaces has to become a culture metric in the organization. How many people could open up and speak their heart out without the fear of repercussion at any level, especially the manager level, the layer which is sandwiched between the two ends? And if this is a culture driving metric, then your company is really on the way to success, because you experience less burnouts, less fear, and more innovation. The second thing that they could definitely do is apply only technology, Shrenaji, picking from you, which helps, not hinders. I mean, if you have 20 types of dashboards, which is only going to cause eye strain, what's the point? Rather have 5 which make sense. So these two things that leaders must implement in their organizations for addressing this very fundamental issue.
So absolutely correct. Yeah. What do you think, Harsha, about this? The closing
Um,
question.
Yes, I think one important thing is when the check-ins, for example, the check-ins with managers, with leaders, they are important. I think it has to be a very imperative question saying, okay, how's the work treating you? How is the workload on you? I think people usually talk about updates and what have you done and all of that. But I think we have to get into a culture of really checking in on this aspect at whatever interval makes sense for your organization. I think that is something that people have to be mindful about. Secondly, I think the work design in itself, you expect a manager and six people to deliver elephant size work. I think that's very unreasonable. So you have to understand the design of your organization and then, of course, kind of push the work down. That requires, it has to start from the top, right? I think the design, the org structure, the org design goes back to a lot of other things being in the right space. And I'm tying it back to the spans that I talk about, because that is a reasonable size that work for our organization. I think there could be a different number for each one of the organizations. They have to be mindful of how are these teams structured. When I ask my manager to deliver something, is this a sizable team which can help the manager deliver this kind of output? Those kind of ground level basics have to be in place to avoid the burnout situation.
Yeah, true. Great perspective. In fact, Srinath, would you like to unpack it more? Because a lot has been said on this.
Yeah, I would only say from an aspect of CHRO to avoid the burnouts, let the managers dream big. I think moonshot ideas have always taken away that burden of fatigue, cognitive or physical. When I have a great idea, I start smiling, I start laughing, I start looking up to it. I think that will take away the daily rigor, daily to some extent, right? So one, two, have flexible working policies, but stop stalking on Teams and Slack, and always be present where your team can't even exchange notes and talk freely, right? We see that, and they have open door policies, but they're always behind, right? So um, uh, there should be a line where you draw and withdraw from the normal routine and be able to say, come, let's join together and see something big together. I think those are real value generators, long term value creators for organizations.
Yeah, absolutely correct. In fact, great points. If I had to pick one change, I think I'll go back to Harsha's last response to the last question that I asked. Just make it very, very normal for managers to ask for help. I think that's it. Just create a culture where saying I'm struggling, doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look very self-aware. So I think that will be the first change I think we can recommend managers to implement right from tomorrow. So I think great perspective. Now I could see in the chat box there are a few questions from the audience. We can probably take them first before anybody wants to raise their hands and ask questions directly. So the first question is from Nidhi Gajar. Managers often face pressure from both leadership and their teams, expected to deliver results while supporting others emotionally. How can organizations help managers set healthy boundaries without compromising performance or empathy? So, who would like to take this?
My simple advice would for managers be to stop using words as of yesterday in front of their teams, because everything can wait, as long as the human performance catches up. So giving that space and boundary still will get the results, and it is much more better and qualitative.
Yeah, it's scary to hear it. I remember, you know, 10 years down the line, like as of yesterday, I wanted. So the next one is from Shanmukhi Ramaraju. When multiple managers resign, it often impacts team morale and trust. In such situations, how can peers or remaining team members rebuild trust within the team and prevent burnout while maintaining performance?
So here, I think important is the transparency in terms of how is the organization functioning. When normally a lot of people resign at the same time, the question is directly on the organization: are we sinking? And that necessarily need not be true. It just could be a performance issue, or it could be somebody has got a great opportunity, or it just could be a reorganization for financial reasons, but not necessarily loss making. It could be anything. But if people don't know what's happening and the climate becomes uncertain, people start, feeling that heat and start internalizing a lot of negativity which is not even there. So the best way to handle this situation is be as transparent. If there are multiple people resigning from a single team, there is a good possibility that there is a reorganization due to a reason where such skills may not be required. In which case, instead of telling them to resign, please create a bench and outplace them. That keeps the trust in the remaining team members because you're caring for those who are there and those who are going.
Absolutely
Transparency
insightful.
helps.
Yeah, that's really nice. I hope we've answered the questions perfectly well and people are satisfied. There's one more. Do we have time, Faisal, or should we take it probably?
Yeah,
We
yeah, we
can
have
just.
time. We can take one more.
Okay. So Meghna is asking, senior leadership model healthy behaviors matter. Sorry, senior leadership model healthy behavior matter. They should motivate. In brackets, it is use, leave, disconnect after hours to create credible culture. Okay, senior leadership model heavy. They should motivate. Okay.
I
Yes.
think that's a suggestion, I
Yes.
guess,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah,
more
yeah.
than a
More than a
question.
question
Yeah.
because yeah, I also had a brain
Fully
fog for
agree.
a second. Yeah.
That's like an ideal scenario where
Yeah.
all of us would love to be. Uh, but having said that, I think we also need to have a little bit of view on realities of life. So yes, leadership must emulate these healthy behaviors, but there may be circumstances where they are unable to, even if they want to. In which case, we need to assess situationally what is the situation, how do we need to respond, and then once the situation is responded adequately, take your break with pride. No problem.
And I think, Radhika, over that, I do have a leader who's exactly like this, right? Doesn't disconnect, is always connected, never goes on leave. But I think what he does very differently is also say that I am a person like this, but I don't have an expectation that you work after us. I don't have an expectation that you are not taking leave. I think being transparent and being genuine about it, you don't have to change your style, but tell people that they can be what they want to be, right? Respect their have those boundaries set is very important. I think my that leader that I'm talking about does it beautifully well.
Great. I think, yeah, that was a suggestion. Senior leadership needs to balance things. Great. So, thank you so much to all our panelists for this engaging and honest conversation and to everyone who's joined us today. So, if there is one thing we can all take away today is that burnout is not a personal flaw, it's not an individual weakness. It's a sign that the system needs to be, fixed somewhere. So, yeah, so we will also implement a lot of things taken from here, and I hope people are listening and can start implementing these. So, thank you once again for your time and your insights. Have a great rest of your day and take care, especially of the managers out there who are holding it together. Thank you. Faisal, do you want to
Yeah, yeah.
close the
Thank
entire?
Yeah. So, thank you, Ms. Ritika, for skillfully steering the discussion and ensuring a seamless flow of ideas and engagement. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists. Your perspective shed meaningful light on the challenges managers face in balancing expectations, boundaries, and well-being, and offered thoughtful ways organization can better support this critical layer of the workforce. Your contribution added immense value to the discussion and helped make the session engaging and impactful for all the participants. For those eager to learn and grow, the recording of today's session is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Thank you to all our participants for being part of this session. Your presence made the discussion even more meaningful. We look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the topic the role of CFOs in driving sustainable business practices on November 20th, 2025. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being part of this journey. Take care and farewell for now. Thank you, dear speakers, once again. It's been a pleasure
Thank
having you
you.
with us in this
Bye-bye.
Thank
webinar.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Bye.
Thanks.